Hello, everybody. In this week's mini lesson, we are going to be covering another aspect of text structure, or how authors tell their stories, this time focused on how writers reveal information in different ways in order to create different emotional effects. Basically, why we're looking at this is that when we're consuming stories, whether that be through reading or watching TV shows or watching a movie, um, we feel different things. Stories are meant to make us feel things. And sometimes we feel surprise. Sometimes we feel tension. We're like on the edge of our seat. Sometimes a little bit of mystery, wondering what's coming next. And the being able to understand how authors create those feelings by revealing information to the audience in different ways can help us appreciate those feelings and kind of see inside the workings of that storytelling and see how they're able to make us feel those things and appreciate that storytelling more. So let's review really quick where we've come and what we've covered so far during this distance learning unit that we are working in. We talked about topics and central ideas, those one-word phrases that tell you what the story is about. Not a summary, but like the big ideas that are going on in the story. We also talked about themes, the messages and lessons that we can interpret from the stories. Last week, we covered one aspect of text structure, which is how authors manipulate time in different ways. We talked about these 4 different text structures as far as time goes. And new this week, we're going to be looking at how authors reveal information. So, one quick note about the difference between informative text versus literary text. Obviously, revealing information is the whole point of informative text, like news articles and nonfiction. And so the structures that writers of informative texts follow are going to be different than what writers of literary texts follow, who are not so much trying to inform you as entertain you. So just really quick, we're not going to cover this week, but just for your information, there are some text structures for informative texts that control how authors reveal the information and convey the information in their writing. But we are going to focus more, because most of us are reading literary text or fictional stories. And when we're reading stories like that and watching TV shows like that, the real question is, who knows what? And there's kind of 3 main combinations that we can have for how writers are revealing their information. The first and probably most common is when authors communicate information so that the characters and the audience know the same information at the same time. What this means is that we're, as an audience, kind of going along the journey with the character. We're in the same boat as them. And so we're feeling what the character is feeling. And that can lead to a couple of different emotions. It means that if the character doesn't know what's going on, we don't know what's going on. And so we might feel some suspense, wondering what's coming next. It means that if the character gets surprised by something, we get surprised by something in the same way. It also means that you might be able to kind of feel what they're feeling. If they're feeling sad, you're probably feeling sad. If they're feeling anxious, you're probably feeling anxious. The second type is when the audience knows more than the character does. And so we might see them getting into a situation where they might be in danger and they don't know it. And we feel, in this case, a kind of tension. When you know things that the character doesn't, you might want to like yell out at them to say like, oh, stop, like, no, don't do that, or you're making a mistake, because we have information that they don't. One example of that, that's kind of classic in horror movies, is when like we see that someone is about to jump out at somebody, but the character doesn't, and you sit there like, oh, this is awful, because you see what's going to happen even though the character doesn't. Finally, there could be cases where the character or characters know more than the audience does. An example of this would be, sometimes this happens in mystery stories a lot, where like one character knows what really happened, and someone is lying, and the whole truth isn't coming out, but someone knows what happened. And as an audience, we don't know what happened. And so this often creates a sense of mystery, because someone knows something and we don't have that information yet. Okay, here is that same information, just kind of in a simplified chart form. If we have the same information as the characters, we're in the same boat as them, that's likely going to create some suspense and maybe surprise. If we have more information than the characters do, then that's what leads to tension. And if the characters have more information than we do, that creates mystery and maybe a big reveal at the end when we suddenly have our minds blown by what was really going on the whole time. So as you're reading, the strategy for analyzing this aspect of text structure is to just ask yourself how the author is revealing information and who knows what. Who's getting the information and who isn't? Are we missing something? Is the character missing something? Are we in the same boat as them? And what does that make us feel as the audience? Here are some examples, just quick examples that we can go through. I based my stories examples off this image of a sniper in a futuristic video game. I chose that image because the short story that you're going to be reading, which I'll show you in a second, is also based on a sniper, though not in a futuristic video game. This sniper is in the Irish Civil War. All right, so here's 3 versions of how this story could go that show those different types of information. This first example, there's a war, and we follow a sniper on a mission when suddenly she's shot at and she doesn't know from where, and she has to figure it out to survive. In this situation, we're in the same boat as the main character here. We don't know where these shots are coming from. We don't know why. They probably surprised us the same as they surprised the sniper. And so we feel that suspense in the moment with her as she's going through her mission. But it could be told a different way. Suppose that the author chose to give us both the sniper's side, where we see the sniper looking at the enemy, but then we also see the enemy planning a counterattack. Maybe they got some intel about the sniper's location and they know where she is and they're going to go get her. In this case, we have more information than the character does because the author chose to reveal us this other side of the story. And so when we're watching the sniper with that information that she doesn't have, we're going to be feeling more tension. We might want to yell, "Watch out." Like we see what's coming even though the character doesn't. And that creates a certain kind of emotion as you're reading. As a third example, this is kind of a mystery example. Imagine that the sniper is like looking down through their scope at the enemy camp and she sees something that puzzles her. She sees something strange. Suddenly she changes her aim and she aims at her own side's base or own soldiers or something, and she begins firing down her own officers. As an audience, we might be really puzzled by why she did this. We might be confused. But when she saw the enemy base, she saw something that gave her information that we don't have yet. She realized something that made her change. And so we would be sitting there as the audience wondering why she did that. And that mystery could get revealed through the rest of the story. Maybe she runs off and joins some other army, but we don't know why. That's a case of the character having more information than we do. All right, those are the 3 basic ways of structuring reveals of information. Ask yourself who's getting information and who's not, and what is that making you feel? You'll be practicing that by reading this text in the Actively Learn website. It's the short story that I've recommended before. It's called The Sniper, and it's a pretty short story. There's some instructions here at the top. I'm asking you to think about some of these focusing questions, and I'd like you to try taking notes. The way you do that is you highlight a section and then you can insert a note there, and you can decide if you want just me to be able to see it or the whole class to see it if you want to start kind of a discussion. Also, these black boxes are embedded questions. I want you to answer all of those. There are 2 short answer questions at the very end, so don't forget to answer those as well. All right, best of luck to you. Let me know if you have any questions, and have a good week.